Hey, welcome to Theology Shift Episode 8. I'm Dr. Richard Burkhalter. This is part of our weekly in-person Bible study that I want to share with you online. So today we're talking and we're studying the word submission, what it doesn't mean and what it really means. That word submit has been greatly misused within the church world and by many Christians. Actually, it's been abused in an attempt to elevate one person over another, specifically in reference to men as they relate to women. So let's start with the right definition of the word so that we can apply it correctly to Scripture. In the Bible, submit is actually a description of Christian grace. It is our yielding voluntarily our preference to another person. Unfortunately, our English version of that word is very limited. So we hear or even read the word submission or submit, and we get negative because it takes on a negative meaning for us. My wife said at our Bible study last week that when it comes to studying the Bible, unfortunately, we approach it and the words in it from a Western mindset. So without proper study, we see what's not there. And while submit may mean you and I are obeying, yielding to, and accepting someone's treatment or conditions from someone in authority or seen as superior, in the Greek, however, which the New Testament was written in, it does not mean obey. The Greek word for obedience or obey is hupako, and it means to listen or hearken to. The word submission, however, is hupatasso, which means to lift up, to put in order, or even to get under. Again, it does not mean obedience. Submission is you and I voluntarily raising someone else to our own personal level of importance and worthiness. But I want to go a little deeper to the root of the controversy. See, in American society, churches, and homes, we've been exposed to not only a different definition of submission, but even several types of it. We have to submit to the culture, or we're told to submit to tradition, which unfortunately several churches and denominations have done. So we read or we hear some preacher teach on Ephesians 5:22 that says, "Wives, submit to your own husbands as you do to the Lord." Verse 23 goes on to say, "For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church." And so many people stop there. And with their limited knowledge, they've told many women that it means to yield to and just listen and accept whatever your husband says. Listen, a person or teacher in error can only grow or disciple people in error. But cherry picking Scripture can be a very dangerous thing, especially when we don't know the context. So let's start in Ephesians 5, verse 21, where we are told to submit to one another. See, this isn't simply a wife thing, it's an everybody thing. So that verse alone means that submission is done on our own accord and for the sole purpose of reflecting Jesus in our lives. Every one of us are called to submit, to lift another up, to put in order one another without regard to age, gender, nationality, or even economic status. See, biblical submission isn't obeying everyone. It's you and I reflecting the very character of God. It's inclusive, and it's where Christians are called to live. Now let's address Paul in Ephesians 5 and Peter in 1 Peter chapter 2. See, when they were using the word submit, they were giving Christians a way of living in a culture that was more than just hostile toward them and the teachings of Jesus. Peter addresses the same issues that followers of Christ were experiencing. In 1 Peter 5:5, he says that yes, we should be subject to or submit to another, and in it, we become clothed in humility. So listen, submitting oneself to another deals with mutual respect, whether it's wives to husbands, husbands to wives, or friend to friend. It should, and it actually does not convey the loss of a person's rights or their say. Submission should never be taught as an attitude or an action required for women in relation to men. There's no teaching in the Bible that puts anyone over another. Peter's theme when he wrote his first letter was centered around the believer's life and duty. And get this, Christians then, very much like today, were the minority. So Peter was simply encouraging them, understand and hear me, because this applies to every believer now, to be a demonstration to the world. It's the power of God at work in our lives that enabled them then and enables us now to live as examples in a hostile world. In 1 Peter 2:13, the apostle writes that we must submit ourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution. See, as followers of Christ, we're to show obedience as well as respect for authority. 1 Peter 2:11 says that we should conduct ourselves honorably among those that don't believe in God. So even if those people think that we're evil, they will see our honorable life and they will actually glorify God. Peter continues to emphasize the point in verses 15 through 17 when he says, "For it is God's will that by doing the right and honorable thing, you silence the ignorance of the foolish." And if you keep reading, he talks to servants as it pertains to their masters. Then he addresses women. The ultimate emphasis from both Paul in Ephesians and Peter in 1 Peter was for the women to win their husbands to Christ. First century everywhere demanded submission to the husband, no different than many third world countries still do today. Peter and Paul are saying, if submitting to your husband will win him to Christ, then do it. But still, nowhere at all in the Bible does it say or even suggest that a person submit to abuse of any type. The demonstration of love, forgiveness, character, and integrity is what submission really looks like anyway. And the cool thing is Peter uses Sarah, Abraham's wife, as a perfect example. See, it's recorded that Sarah referred to Abraham as Lord. She didn't use it to show her subservience, but she used it as respect toward her husband. Lord was then actually a term of endearment, something like we might say, sir, ma'am, honey. It never was used to mean rulership over someone. Scripture also says that Abraham obeyed Sarah, which shows us what? Mutual respect and submission. Peter reinforces his point of mutual submission by informing the men that in the same way women are to live, so are you. So remember, we all submit. We all show grace. We lift up people as more important than ourselves. That's what we do. See you next time.